Thank you for joining us to take part in the 2014 Big Read, Missoula's month-long celebration of Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carry. The Big Read is a program of the National Endowment of the Arts in partnership with Arts Midwest and is designed to revitalize the role of literature in American culture. This community-wide effort is made possible by a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts and the generous support of Missoula's Big Read partners. No part of the grant is going to today's speakers. But our speakers today, Kylie Rebish.
Yep.
Kylie Rebish is a senior in accounting at the University of Montana. Rachel Dixon is a sophomore in biology and EVST, environmental studies. And I would like to, a small part of the grant is going to each of today's presenters. Some chocolates and some cups.
Thank you.
Please fill out a form on how well the presentation was, and I will put some forms on that table there. Please fill those out when you leave today. And with no further ado, take it away, Rachel and Kylie.
Well, thank you for having us. So Rachel and I in January, started in December and into January, we took a trip through the University of Montana to Vietnam. We were studying climate change and the effects of climate change on the economy, the environment, and the local peoples in the area. And I guess we can start from there. We're mostly going in chronological order, kind of how we went through our own process of modern Vietnam.
Yeah, and you guys can just ask questions.
Yeah.
We don't have to go through everything.
Yeah, we have a lot of pictures. Great. Want to talk about the first day?
So the first day we visited the Vietnam War Museum, and this is the outside. We just have some pictures from the museum, and it was a pretty hard experience actually, because I hadn't ever been exposed to on the other side of the story. And it was hard to be walking around the museum as an American and seeing what happened to the people in Vietnam. And we never learned about it, you know?
Yeah, it took a very anti-American perspective. It was very harsh and disturbing to see.
Yeah, I don't know.
And they don't have the laws as much about what can and can't be shown, so it was much more graphic.
Yeah. And so there are different rooms displaying the different effects of the war. Like this is showing the effect on the biosphere and how they completely wiped out not only people but the landscape. Okay. So
Birth defects.
there are a ton of pictures of just birth defects and really horrible side effects of the chemicals. And
There we go.
yep. And so moving on from
The very
museum.
depressing part.
This is just
Our first meal together as a group. It's 11 of us?
yeah, it was kind of cool though. It was at
Something
there
happened.
we are. It was at this old French villa house. It was really strange, but it was this huge fancy house thing. What is happening?
What the meal consists of?
Well, what did this meal consist of? Coconuts. Coconut and coconut milk. After you drank it, they would cut it open for you and you'd eat the meat inside. A lot of vegetables. They do this, they have a bread pancake type thing, and you put vegetables and fruit and meat, whatever meat they serve, usually fish in this area.
And then you wrap it up. It's like a Vietnamese burrito, sort of.
Yeah.
But the majority of what we ate, you'll see later, it was called hot pot, and it's like really common in the South. We were just traveling around the South, and they basically bring you like a boiling pot of water and then a lot of different ingredients, and you just throw it all into a pot and make soup.
Yep. Including live fish.
Yeah, sometimes the ingredients were live when they came out to the table, which was sort of strange.
Yep. Main transportation in Vietnam is motorbikes. There's, 10-to-1 motorbike to car ratio.
Probably more.
More than that,
I'd
probably,
say.
yeah. This is waiting for the ferry to get on the ferry to cross to wherever we were going. This
Can
one.
Jiao.
Can Jiao. Yep.
Yeah, you can keep going. But this is kind of a funny picture. So we'd all be like standing on the side where there weren't any motorbikes, and to get off the ferry you had to like stand in front of the motorbikes and then like run because they'd come plowing towards you, and you had to like get out of the way before
Yep.
it was kind of a free-for-all. Like you had to cross the street, you just had to walk across
go.
and they just dodged you. But I couldn't look. Okay. Yeah, it was scary, but
Yep. Just our experiences on the street, basically. Street food was very common. This is at Can Jiao, which this area had been completely destroyed by Agent Orange. And basically, they've made it into a reserve and are trying to bring it back, and they're doing a fantastic job.
How did they bring it back?
so yeah, I'd keep going. So it's a lot of an education component as far as educating farmers and people on protecting the mangroves. And so this reserve mainly they were basically just growing the mangroves back and
Growing back what little did survive in replanting.
it's like a pretty intensive process. Like mangroves take a really long time to repair. There's some monkeys, but if you keep going, there's their main area where they're growing like baby mangroves. You can kind of see they're in like tiny little cups, and
Yep.
I don't know. One of the big parts was that they would give this land to farmers to take care of and pay them a certain amount a year to take care of. You should stop for a second.
Yep.
To take care of a certain area of land. So it would give the farmers incentive to not mow down the mangroves and create monoculture shrimp farms, which was like a big problem we saw. But instead, they'd take care of like the biodiversity and mangroves in return for a stipend from the government. It was pretty large stipend too. Like they were putting
A living wage.
Yeah. So that was a big part of this reserve. And so we
Pictures of
learned
mangroves.
about the reserve, and then we went on a walk and actually got lost. Were you on that?
I was on that part,
Yeah,
yeah.
we got lost in the mangrove forest.
That was fun.
So then we took a boat to,
I saw lots of boats.
yeah, we were on a lot of boats. So this next place we're visiting, you should stop,
Yep.
is a shrimp farm ran by one
A man and his family.
Yeah, a man and his family. And it was kind of a good example of a family that took care of the landscape and was able to like, sustain a livelihood for themselves. So we all sat down for a meal of his,
Stuff caught, and
yeah,
that all made by him and his family and caught.
yeah, fresh seafood, very fresh, wasn't cooked, actually.
Some of it was.
Some of it. And
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
was kind of,
do you want to know what's on this plate? Okay. All right. These are just like little tea cookies. These are raw oysters. You stick them in wasabi sauce or whatever else they had, and you just eat them raw. Limes for whatever. This is catfish.
the catfish was really good. I tried it.
Yeah, they boil it usually is how they cook it. And the rest of it is various local vegetables that they grow there. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Lots of meat, lots of vegetables.
And this was my favorite
This is all of our favorite
eating
days.
experience. It was really fun. We all just sat in a circle with the professors, and there we are. But we found out that it's customary for them to continuously serve you alcohol, and none of us knew how to deal with it because it was rude to refuse it, and so they just kept pouring it. I had to turn my glass upside down at one point, and
They were serving us rice wine. Rice wine
Yeah.
that was homemade and basically rice liqueur.
yeah, it was very strong. But it was interesting customary because we really wanted the wife and who else was cooking?
Daughter-in-law.
Yeah, 3 women were cooking in the kitchen, and it wasn't okay for them to come sit with us and eat. We asked the host family if they could, and they said that wasn't.
How it was done.
Yeah, so it was interesting.
Yep. Another picture. Drinking. This is the area that the government has protected. You can see that there's a lot of different waterways. This is how mangroves work. There's a lot of open waterways, but a lot of closed waterways underneath the mangroves themselves. And basically, they'd open up a little portion of this barrier that we're standing on here to let the shrimp in and out with the moon, right? It was with the moon cycles.
Yeah. And one of the main reasons the mangroves are so important is because they're the main buffer zone for climate change. So as the sea level's rising and as salinity intrusion increases, the mangroves are one of the only buffer zones that exists in Vietnam. And
Storms too.
yeah, as Vietnamese people are trying to live, off a wage of something, they've been cutting down the mangroves and making monoculture farms because that's the only way that they can survive immediately. And it was kind of interesting coming into that situation, because I have trouble from America thinking of economics before the environment. And over there it was people were immediately trying to survive, so they couldn't oftentimes think of the environmental impact it had.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yep. We're helping plant mangroves here. They had us do a small charitable effort at this point.
Yeah, and this was right after the dinner, so.
All the trees wound up leaning like this.
Yeah, and it was really hard because we had all these random boots to choose from, so we all had just some of us had 2 right shoes and
Yep.
you got stuck, really stuck
Yeah.
in this mud.
You can see her, she's about mid-calf.
And the mangroves were really heavy also, so it was a struggle.
This is what the cities look like. What?
Well, how long does it take them to get mature? How long the mangroves
10 years?
plant those little seedlings?
I think, yeah, I don't know.
About 10 years from gestation to adulthood.
But it takes a lot longer for them to integrate into the soil, and
Become as big as they were before.
yeah, I don't know.
This is in Ho Chi Minh City, Old Saigon. It was Christmas and New Year's time, and they liked their lights a lot.
Yeah.
This was basically the center. The globe is the center, and it was all had clocks all the way around it, so that was fun. Got New Year's before anyone else.
And New Year's is quite the event in Ho Chi Minh because all the motorcyclists from all of Vietnam congregate in Ho Chi Minh City for this huge ordeal. And we don't have any pictures of it really, but
Reed Yockey, please come to the accounts desk. Reed to the accounts desk, please.
But I went out to dinner with a few people. I don't know if you were
I'm
on
not
that
sure.
dinner. But one of the girls offered to take me on her motorbike.
Oh, I was on that one.
Yeah, on New Year's Eve. And so we drove through the streets, and it was interesting. We got, you would just, run into people and bounce off people, and they're just like an insane amount of motorbikes. It was ridiculous. And she was just this tiny little lady, like driving me around on her. It was fun.
Yep. This is a traditional tea ceremony that there's a picture of. It's a very ritualistic thing. They open up lily leaves, and it was a very cool experience. They put tea inside the lily that opens in the morning, and then it closes at night, and then they serve the tea out of the lily right there. Water lily.
Yeah, they had all these customs where they'd like dump the tea back and forth a certain number of times, and I don't know, it was pretty
It's very cool.
interesting.
This is International University. This is an all English-speaking college, so you have to take a test to get into the school that you can speak. This is sufficient level of English to take classes.
And it's very rare for people in Vietnam to get a higher education. I think it's like the top, 5 to 10%
Something
gets a
sad.
college education, and they're often very wealthy. I mean, they're always very wealthy, so.
Yep. It's a research facility.
They had some really coul research going on there.
We sat in on a couple of presentations that they had, so that was interesting. Us and the college students.
This was a night we went out in Ho Chi Minh City to a water puppet show, and there were all these little girls outside doing this dance.
Practicing for New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Playing to American country music.
Yeah, it was really strange. They were doing like a cowboy dance. So,
Yep. I don't even remember what song that was.
I don't know.
Devil Went Down to Georgia or something.
What's a water puppet?
Oh,
This.
I'll show you. So, yeah, we go into this like strange theatery room, and the music was extremely loud. It was all live musicians, like
On
you
the
could see
side.
them on the side, and
Yeah.
then
The middle is a big pool about a foot
Yeah.
deep, and they have all these puppets out on sticks underneath the water, and they're
but we still
Don't-
don't understand where the people were because they were
I
doing
don't
like
have
really
an idea.
sophisticated things with these puppets. Like they would chase each other and like climb up
Arms
things,
would
and
move.
everything would be happening, but like they couldn't see what they were doing. So
a lot of practice.
I don't know.
Yep. There's the
They-
puppeteers.
They popped up underwater after it was done.
It was really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. There's a market. Selling coconuts on the street. Street vendors is a big thing. Normal day.
Yeah,
Paused.
we were told not to eat street food, but about I think it was like the first day we started eating it because it was really good. And everyone kind of got sick, but I don't know if it was from the street food.
I doubt
What are
it.
the masks that the people are wearing?
Well, the traffic is so congested that like you need a mask to wear your motorbike without breathing in like a ton of fumes. Like I didn't
Yeah, the pollution is that bad.
I didn't realize it until I got on a motorbike on New Year's, and like you can't breathe. So
Yeah.
those are what the masks are for.
Yeah, you can see it in the sky. It was so hazy it was never actually blue.
Yeah.
Not one day.
Mm-mm. And you would see little babies and little kids with masks on the
This
motorbike.
is Saigon.
Yeah.
Yes, this is in Saigon.
We're still in Ho Chi Minh. That's where we flew into.
Yep.
And we have some random pictures of strange things that we saw on motorbikes.
So they carry everything on their motorbikes. We saw anything from birds in cages to people carrying mattresses.
And some live crocodiles. That was
That's
strange. But this is a cage of puppies that was on a motorbike. Like we'd just be driving in the van and see like someone was carrying a full mattress by themselves
I
and
don't know how
driving
they
their
did that.
motorbike. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I don't know.
It's another meal. I don't remember what we had at this
It was
one.
at Ken's.
Oh, that was at Ken's. That was so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is how they do cemeteries. Since it's so wet there, they can't have underground cemeteries, so everything is above ground. They're usually family plots. They don't have what we call a cemetery per se. Now we're moving into Canta. That was the second place that we spent the majority of our time. This bridge was built in the 80s or 90s by the Australians as a charitable endeavor to help the country to develop a little bit better. It's a street market. We put lots of pictures just because this was so much fun.
Yeah, and it was so awesome because you could just go. Well, this was right outside our hotel, so you could just go buy fresh fruit or veggies whenever.
All of these animals here are alive, actually. The frogs that you see in the big pan on the ground are actually tied. Those are lungfish, I think.
And you just see animals like escaping from their vendors. It was kind of funny, but
Kind of sad, kind of funny.
yeah. This is the statue of Ho Chi Minh in Can Tha. It's kind of a famous little area. That was interesting.
Yep.
And there's a river that runs right through Can Tha, so that's their main form of transportation.
Yep.
And you,
Yep. This river was really cool. I thought it was really cool because
Yeah.
it changed directions with the tide. When the tide came in, it was a north-flowing river? North or west? It changed directions with the tide, which I
Yeah,
thought
it
was
was
really
interesting.
weird.
it was pretty strange.
Yeah.
It was also strange to see people just living on the river because a lot of people just lived in their boats.
Like these boats, they would go onto land and get whatever they needed
Yeah.
or sell whatever they had.
You'd see people like brushing their teeth out the back of their boat, or it was interesting.
Yep. This was another university that we went to, and this professor, the one kneeling on the ground, is showing us how acidic the soil is based on an experiment. The mangroves are incredibly acidic, so it makes it really hard for them to grow anything of value in Vietnam, which is partly what the university was doing research on. Shows the pH. Another university talking to their students.
We had to play these very strange games with the students.
Yep, we were passing bottles with our elbows.
Yeah.
Paper.
Has the soil always been really acidic, or is that part of the problem from pollution and from?
No, it's because of the mangroves. The mangroves themselves are very, very acidic, and when the trees drop their leaves and they rot, it becomes very acidic.
Hmm.
You didn't remember that?
I didn't know.
Another meal. All the meals were fairly similar. Lots of fruits and vegetables
And
and
hot pot.
hot pot.
A lot of hot pot.
This is
And
your
this
host
is-
mom.
Yeah, this is my host mom. She was really sweet. Well, she wasn't actually my host mom. She was their daughter. It was kind of strange because her parents were out of town and they had just like signed up to have host kids, but they weren't there. So we showed up, and her and her husband were kind of, I don't think they really wanted us there. It was kind of odd. I don't know, they had just gotten married and they didn't really want visitors, I don't think. But
Yep.
when their parents got there, they were really nice.
Yep.
So,
All of us. While we were there, we also were shown a lot of different ways that they're trying to be more energy efficient so they don't have to pay for electricity or have to find ways to put electricity into really rural areas.
and this was my favorite day, almost. It, yeah, it was an interesting day. But we visited a biogas farm, and so this tube, you should go back to the tube. So it was a whole system that was entirely sustainable, and the family would, basically they had an entire farm, and the university put in these systems for like $60. It was really cheap, which was interesting. And it was all based on methane gas.
From the
So-
pigs, you can
yeah,
see them in the background.
from the pigs. So they had pig pens, and the pigs would defecate, and then they'd wash out all the poop into this tube. It would go down these pipes into the tube, and it would create methane gas. And then the methane gas would go to their electricity. They could power all the electricity from the methane gas, and then the leftover waste would be used as fertilizer for the fish and to grow water plants. And
They would eat and sell these.
yeah, they would eat and sell the water plants, and then all of this were fruit trees that were also fertilized by the pigs, and different vegetable crops. And it was just really cool to see this system that was so cheap but like sustained an entire family. And it was also interesting from the point of like environmental justice, because the women in Vietnam often have to cook over fires, so they're exposed to like a lot of nasty fumes, and it can cause some issues. But with this system, they were able to cook from electric.
This is the family's children and our professor in the hammock.
Peace and flour.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The hammocks were everywhere. It was great. This was our favorite meal, or my favorite meal.
It was really good.
It was like a sweet coconut soup, a sour coconut soup, mung bean pastries, and shrimp.
Yeah, and the mung beans were really cool because they
They're
were,
the little round things in the right-hand
yeah,
corner.
that's the plate of like mung bean little things. But they were, the crop that they found was best for nitrogen fixing in the soil, so a lot of people would use that.
The dog.
Yep.
So our first motorbike ride for most of us.
Yeah.
And this is a snake farm. They do the same thing. They raise the snakes and then skin them for the hide to sell, and I think they sell the meat.
Yeah.
But they did the same thing. The snakes defecate, they wash out the bottom, and it creates electricity through the gases.
It's my return from being lost.
Her motorcycle guide got lost.
Yeah, I got lost for a couple hours with a man on a motorcycle.
Who didn't speak English.
Yeah, it was scary, but we made it back, and I saw the snakes. And then so this guy was feeding a chicken to the snake. They,
Yeah,
like,
that was kinda
force-feed
terrifying.
him. It was really sad.
Yep.
Is that a boa?
Yep.
They were pythons, weren't they?
Yeah.
It was
I
a
think so.
python farm.
Yeah. I think they were pythons.
Yeah, they were huge. And they couldn't move. It was pretty sad. They were just like in these tiny little cages.
Yep. Different culture.
Yeah.
More riding on the motorbikes.
Yeah, we had to get back on the motorbikes after that.
Yep. Lilies, they're very common. Our host families, most of us went and got manicures or pedicures, so
They were like $1. It's kind of sad though to see just like the working condition, and
Yeah.
felt kind of bad supporting it. I don't know. It was
You're
it
supporting
was
them, though,
interesting.
too.
Yeah, it was just kind of conflicting a lot of the time because he wanted to support the business, but it was also so different from,
what we'd expect.
yeah, but I don't know.
Another class. This was our music class. We had a traditional music class, and that was a lot of fun. This is a amateurs band that they had. This is the professor, which for me, I've been in band my entire life. He personifies the crazy music professor that you always imagine having.
He was so wonderful.
He was great.
Yeah, he couldn't speak much English, but he'd
No.
just like sing songs and like dance around.
And play flute with his nose for, I don't know why he did that. Yep. And then they let us, yeah.
Well, and then we all played the flute afterwards.
Yep. And we tried out all the instruments.
Mhm. It's nice.
Yep. Another lecture. We went to a lot of lectures. You want to take Heifer Farm?
Yeah, so we got to visit Heifer International, which was really amazing because we were the first international group to ever visit. It took like 3 years to get it passed by the Communist Party. A lot of what was planned in our trip took a really long time to actually get passed through because of all the regulations and whatnot. But we visited this little village of Khmer people, which is one of the biggest minorities in Vietnam. And we sat and talked with them for a little while. And then we got to split up and go visit different parts of the Heifer Project. So this is rice drying out on the ground, and it was interesting with the rice. They would dry it on the roads because they didn't have enough yard space, so we would just have to drive over their rice whenever we were driving places.
Kids in the community.
And so then they just gather up the rice, they just scoop it up and.
Yeah,
the
they just
rice.
scoop it up, and I mean,
They have them on tarps, so they would kind of just fold up the tarps, and then
Yeah.
they either kept it and ate it themselves, or they sold most of it, I think.
yeah, Vietnam's a huge rice producer.
Yeah.
But we should, so for my group, we were in different groups at the Heifer Project, but I got to go visit the basket weaving and the production that the women often took place in. The Heifer Project was really cool because it pooled all the community's money into like a central fund, and they were able to use it for both farming and craft work. So the women would make chicken coops out of dried bamboo. Bamboo, was it?
I didn't
Yeah,
go.
it was bamboo. I think it was bamboo. And yeah, they dry these long stalks of bamboo and make chicken coops, and then make like baskets and all kinds of different things. So we got to try weaving, and I don't have any pictures of that on there, but it was cool. They also had chickens and cows, and
Yep.
we would talk about.
Yeah, Heifer Project, for those who don't know, it's a charitable organization where people from wealthier countries basically donate a cow or a chicken or a sheep or something to a community, and then they raise the animal, they breed it, and then they have to give the baby to another member of the community. So it's a community effort.
It's really cool because it keeps going and producing.
Yep. And so I went out and saw where they were doing the farming and the cattle. Yep, just grazing the cattle. Some of their first ones, like that calf will be given to another member of the community eventually.
And all the animals are really healthy, and
They take good care of their
it
animals.
was really awesome, yeah.
They have to look nice because they have to sell them later. Yep. These women are wearing traditional hats that they wear in their growing potatoes. Right here, they're taking the potato plants, and we help them for a little while. So are the leaders of the community, basically, with our professor. We were very tall. Another meal. A group we went to another place.
This was like the Youth Alliance group, and they work to preserve this island called Sok Trong, right? Sok Trong, I
Yes.
think. And they were really big on saving bats. Saving the
Oh, no.
bats in the, no, they were.
No, this is
in
the island. That's not the bat pagoda.
Well, I know, but they like
Okay.
preserved this island, but then their other project was like protecting this one species of bat that we'll show
Fruit
you
bats.
later. Yeah.
Yep.
So we went to the island to
Which
walk
is-
around with them.
Which is also trying to be more a sustainable island. I think it is partially funded by the government, but the interesting part is you can really see the communist government influence still. We don't have a picture of it on this, but on this particular trip, since this is a somewhat controversial youth group, we were actually followed by 2 or 3 military personnel
Same with
the
in
entire
Heifer.
time. Same with Heifer
Yeah.
Project. It was actually a little terrifying.
Yeah, it was interesting.
What were they watching for, the military group?
I don't really know.
We could be very close-minded and say they were being communists and paranoid, or we could say they were making sure that we weren't breaking any rules by being there.
Yeah, and yeah, I think it was a lot of like I don't know. I don't really know, but
It was a really interesting dynamic. It was,
Are the Yankees socially accepted by the populace, or are you creating the possibility?
actually, yes, they love Americans. Yeah, the local population love Americans. The government, a little bit less so, and we're more in the southern part of Vietnam where we were trying to help them not become, we were trying to help them during the Vietnam War not become communist, absorbed into the communist state, so they approve of us a lot more than they would up
In the
north in
north.
Hanoi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So they were feeding all the fish at the island.
Yep. We went to a bunch of catfish farms. This is a catfish farm. Yep.
One of the interesting things, yeah, about the island was they were talking about how during flooding season the kids can't go to school because they can't cross the river to get off the island. So a lot of issues are directly tied to the water and just the landscape, more so than we see here. Because, I mean, the flooding would cause entire communities to go underwater during the rainy season.
We were actually, where is it? This is a barrier to help basically keep the water out of the rest of the island. They built this up. The seawall. Yeah.
We always see stuff floating down in the river. Is that stuff that has been dislodged? It grows in the river all over the place and it just breaks free and floats down?
A little of both.
It
Some of
also-
it is pollutants, things that have been tossed in the river. Some of it is natural and grows there.
Yeah, the rivers were used for everything, waste disposal and irrigation. I mean, it was just like they were hello toilets in most of the places we went. And they were called hello toilets because they were just stands over the river. So you could like wave to them. Yeah. But, so
It works for them.
there's everything kind of
Yep.
in the rivers.
Yep. Some of the fruit that we would eat, these are about this big. The durian
they're
fruit.
big.
Yeah, they were big and yellow on the inside. I thought they tasted like juicy fruit. It was really weird.
Yeah, they tasted just like juicy fruit gum.
It was weird. Dogs are everywhere. They do eat dogs even though it's frowned upon by the government. But we were never told we were eating dog. I'm pretty sure we ate dog at some point.
I didn't, but
Well, yeah, she's a vegetarian. I ate it. Feeding the catfish, going over really sketchy bridges that we did fall off of once or twice. Everywhere you go, they wind up giving you coffee or tea. Their coffee, they make them really strong. It's a group project we did with the group. Do we want to talk about that more? All right. This is a floating island. We didn't visit the floating islands all that much, but people live on these, and they basically never leave.
there's also floating markets. I got to visit with my homestay family, and all the produce is like out on the river in these big boats. And then all the people who sell produce at the market go out on the river and buy it from these like mass produce boats and then bring it to the market. So that was interesting. It's interesting how much of the culture relies on the river and how much is being wiped out because
Yeah.
of flooding.
This was at a restaurant we were at, actually. These frogs were eventually going to get eaten. Yep. This is the hot pot that she was talking about, all these carrots and mushrooms and fennel and whatever else, and the noodles at the bottom, those would all be put into the pot and boiled. Yep. When we were on the bus one day, we had to stop because there was a random bike race in the middle of the street. It was funny.
And like no one really would know about things
Things.
like this. There'd just still be cars and they'd be like,
Yeah. Oh, there's people. We gotta move.
yeah.
Yep. This is the Bat Pagoda that we mentioned a little bit earlier. It is a Buddhist, right? It's Buddhist.
Yeah.
A Buddhist temple. This is one of the monks. Yep. And we were followed by the government here too. This is traditional musicians again. It's interesting.
Were those all gold statues or just?
Mm.
Gold foil or paint.
They're just
Oh,
painted.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. These are the bats. They're apparently incredibly endangered.
These are like the only ones in the world, and they
Yeah.
live at this bat pagoda.
Yeah. But something that we read before we came is that people actually eat these. They eat bats. These bats are actually like this big. They're absolutely huge and can actually provide for a lot, but they're considered black market meats now, so they're technically illegal, but it still happens in most restaurants.
There's a huge issue with like black market meat in Southeast Asia, just for tourism, mostly for tourism and for richer people.
Yep. You can usually ask at a restaurant if they have something, and they can usually go and get it for you.
Yeah. I don't know. It's strange.
Kids playing music. It was more traditional music. It was really cool. It's very Mongol. It's very Chinese too.
Little xylophone.
Yep, little xylophones, some drums in the back.
And
There's cymbals.
This kid had like a circular instrument that
Yeah.
he would like move around and play. It's interesting.
Yeah, it was really cool. Yep. This is a racing boat. They don't do much of the traditional stuff anymore. The Communist Party kind of tried to make it a monoculture society and kind of eliminated a lot of different cultures, so this is something that's very rare to see. Another monastery. This is kind of something that we can talk about quick. Vietnam is trying to be a little bit more sustainability aware. You couldn't read any of the language, but it's basically talking about green earth and how we need to help the earth, which, since that was the focus of our tour, I thought that was really interesting.
It was interesting too, all the groups we talked to, because a lot of them were trying to engage in projects and help the environment, but it seemed like there was kind of a barrier. Like they weren't able to act on a lot of the projects they had because of government restrictions and, I mean,
Economics.
yeah, they had a bunch of good ideas, but it was really hard to implement them.
Yep.
So
Were the classes and lectures you attended conducted in English, or did you have to have an interpreter?
A little of both.
yeah, both. So there were
The country's actually pretty good with English. Everyone speaks enough or understands enough that they can kind of communicate.
Bilingual?
but a lot of the lectures were translated.
Or really hard to
Or
understand.
very, very hard. And there's a cultural thing where if there's an older male professor,
And our translators that were with us the whole time were female.
they're younger females, and even if they couldn't speak good English, it was culturally unacceptable for the younger female translators to help. So that was,
Unless they were given permission to help.
yeah, that was like,
We had a couple lectures where we have no idea what happened.
yeah, it was like half Vietnamese and hard to. Everyone fell asleep except for me and Kylie all
Which
the time.
we thought it was entertaining.
I don't know.
And people selling on the motorbikes. Can't believe they had all that much stuff on there. Right now what we're standing on is a water barrier. It's a sea barrier between salt water, which is on the right-hand side of the screen, and the fresh water, which is on the left-hand side of the screen. And because of the seawater rise, even though it's not great right now, they're having issues with fresh water and salt water mixing and killing crops and fish and making people sick.
We haven't showed you many pictures, but the majority of our trip was actually spent on like rice farms and shrimp farms, learning about their effects from climate change and how they're changing with the climate. So if you
This is a native species, the water buffalo. They still grow them. They still raise them.
Do they use them for crop tilling or?
Crop, they use them for physical labor, meat, don't think milk. That's not really a thing in this country. But yeah, they use them for anything that you would use a big herd animal for.
Same with the heifer project cattle that we saw.
Those they don't usually use for labor as much because they're trying to keep them extremely healthy for reproductive purposes and for meat.
Okay, oh, okay, but they wouldn't be milk cows.
Yeah, milk is not a big staple here.
But they did use.
They did have it.
They used it locally, I think. But it wasn't something that
Yep. Local
was
kids.
sold.
Yeah. Here's the farms that we were talking about. This is a shrimp farm, a monoculture shrimp farm, which is the majority of this part of the country anymore.
And a big reason that they're building these farms is because of the salinity intrusion. It's so bad that they can't grow rice or like any other crops other than shrimp, because shrimp like saline water. So they would have to mow down the mangroves and create further issues with climate change to combat climate change.
Yep.
So.
Another thing that they're having issues with is the tide pulling out soil and basically shrinking the country. And so what you can see, can you kind of point it out over there, is they have things called T structures that they're starting to make.
So it's made of bamboo, and it's like a 3D process of people pounding bamboo into the ground, and then they reinforce it. So this is all bamboo, and then bamboo here, and it creates a T structure to hold in erosion that is washed back out.
Yep.
Which is a cool solution.
You can actually see the difference in 5 or 10 years. It's pretty amazing. Right behind it, it's actually a huge drop in the soil level.
Yeah, it was like directly helping. So
It's a closer up picture.
And one of the students at the university actually had developed this technique, and then we got to go see it, which was neat.
Yeah. So temple, we saw a lot of temples. This I thought was interesting. This is another mangrove forest that we're in. And basically, this is how mangroves grow. These are seeds. They form seed pods, and the red tips at the very end are the gestated portion. So once that part grows, they fall straight into the soil and will hopefully stick and become a new tree. Just kind of luck of the draw. This is a mangrove forest. The roots will be flooded with water during the tide, when the tide rises, but this is low tide. This is another shrimp farm, another organic shrimp farm.
This was one where they practiced like sustainable farming and used the biodiversity to benefit the shrimp farming. Instead of mowing it down and creating a large shrimp farm, they were able to grow fish and shrimp in one pond, and then
clams.
Have trees and different produce around the edges that were feeding the shrimp instead of feeding the shrimp food that they had to buy. So it was interesting to see the contrasting farms.
Yeah, and this was a different type of forest too. It wasn't the mangrove forest, it was a Melaleuca forest, which is more of a hardwood forest. It's different. This is a weaver. As another charitable thing, a group came in and taught this very rural village how to weave, how to take silk from silkworms and spin it and then weave these absolutely gorgeous.
They were all hand dyed, which was spectacular.
Each little thread is hand dyed.
And they would form these patterns out of them, and there would be, I don't understand how they would do the math to get these.
No idea. Yeah, right here each is like a little chopstick stick with a big long line of weaving, and each one is dyed individually and then strung in this very specific way to create this pattern. A lot of forethought.
This was one of the last reserves we visited, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was Mount Sam.
Oh, this is Mount Sam.
Yeah, that's the top. That's
Okay.
Cambodia and Vietnam.
Yeah, so this is between the border of Cambodia and Vietnam. And
Yep.
it was
This part is Cambodia, and then you get across this road, and then it's Vietnam.
and
We're
it-
still in Vietnam, by the way.
It was like a very holy mountain. It was, it had temples all the way up, and people would like walk up it and pray, kind of, and it was a really interesting.
Yeah.
Buddhist temples.
Yeah,
These
there were mixtures definitely throughout the country, but the majority of them were Buddhist.
Yep. There is a very dominant Catholic population, though, so we saw a lot of Catholic churches.
And there were some temples that were like a mixture between Catholic and Hindu and Buddhism, and it was a very strange combination.
Yeah,
of,
those are the
like,
three main religions of the country.
Yeah.
Yep. This is our very last day in the country. No, we spent a couple more days in this city, but this is our last day in the country. And this is a wildlife reserve, more similar to what you'd see here in the United States, like a They equate it to a Yellowstone type park, but it's not quite the same. These are the same thing, the water buffalo that you saw. And you asked about the labor, that's a water buffalo hauling grasses. They let them harvest dry grass to aid with fire danger because they have fire problems if they just leave it, and they can harvest it and sell it for thatch, for roofs, I think.
So that was a little different than our national parks. They're actually like using the park for production. And it was also really different because there was no sort of buffer zone between the park and the normal living spaces, which was like kind of a shock for us because it went straight from like monoculture farms to national park.
Yeah, you can see it in this wide shot that I took. Yeah. So on the left-hand side, it's the park, and then you get to the other side of where we're standing, and that's all just monoculture farms, rice farms.
Yeah, so
This is a bird reserve is what this one is specifically for. It protects a species of crane that only exists in Vietnam, and this is their main nesting spot.
we didn't get to see one, but they're one of the largest birds in the world, and I'm forgetting what they're called.
Some form of crane.
Yeah.
And I think that is it for what our presentation. Do you guys have any questions specifically for us?
Are there a lot of different ethnicities in Vietnam? I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of different cultures there.
The main ethnicity we were exposed to was the Khmer people.
That was the minority.
Yeah.
The Khmer is the native people, like our Native Americans. They were pushed out by the Viet culture. I'm sorry, I kind of took over from you. The Viet culture, which is the main Vietnamese culture, and the Chinese have actually a very small population too. Very, very hated population.
There are quite a bit of minority groups, though, and
Those are the three big ones.
They would generally be living in the areas that were most affected by like climate change and flooding. And we didn't have any pictures of it, but we visited a temple that was affected by the Khmer Rouge.
Yep.
So they had come over the border of
From Cambodia.
Vietnam. And that was a really intense day. We actually got taken around this temple by a man who had lost his entire family in the killing.
They
the
thought
massacre.
the village had thought that they'd be safe. The Chinese and the Viet people had thought they'd be safe in this temple because it's a sacred holy place, but they were in a small tight spot and they just wiped out the entire group that was in there.
Yeah, and this man had gone out to get like
He went
supplies
somewhere.
for dinner or something, and he came back and his entire family was killed inside the temple. So that was really brutal to hear about.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a random tidbit, though.
Right. Anything else?
And what was the total time you were there? How long?
A little bit less than a month.
And then I stayed for a while. I stayed for like 5 days after that or something.
Would you like to go back?
Oh, I'd go back in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I would love to stay there for longer and like.
Go farther north and see the differences.
And yeah, it would be the perfect place to study climate change too.
Mm-hmm.
So Kylie, right?
Yes.
Kylie, your major is accounting. So did
I
you
am.
look at it from that kind of that business perspective? instead
Yes,
of
I
the
did.
environmental?
I was the only business student on this trip, so I had a very unique perspective. I'm also a climate change studies minor, so I am interested in the climate and how it affects everything, but I'm more trying to look at it as how can we make it a profitable type of thing. So, yeah, a lot of the ideas that they had that were really good ideas and in the long term would have been profitable. For the first 5 to 10 years or so, they would not have been profitable and would have actually taken a lot of money, which is most of what's hindering the government from allowing these things to take place.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, and then a lot of the farms, like the sustainable farms that were great for the environment, did not produce as well as the big monoculture crops, which is another reason that they don't do that.
Well, and it wasn't necessarily they didn't produce as much, but it took longer for them
It
to
took
get
longer.
to the pace of the bigger farms, so economically people were restrained from being sustainable in a lot of places.
Yeah.
What is a living wage there?
Oh man, it's
Not much.
it's very small compared to us. I think it's like $2 or $3 a day at most.
It's
Yeah.
not much.
Yeah, basically, for Americans coming in, it's great because the transition rate or the money rate. Yes, thank you. The exchange rate is very good for us. We'd take $100, get it traded for 1.5 million Vietnam dong, which could basically last you 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So, very interesting.
Was it noisy in the city?
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
very noisy.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you all for coming, the captive audience and also our other audience.
So here is our facility, the Valor House. We're a transitional housing facility for homeless veterans. We're located at 2820 Great Northern Loop, which is off of Mullen in between Broadway and Reserve. And it's a great location for our veterans as we're very close to the state offices in Missoula. And in that Palmer complex near the state offices is a community-based outpatient clinic for the VA. So it's great for our veterans that are receiving their health care there. Okay, and I wanted to start off with just a snapshot of who homeless veterans are. 1 in 7 homeless individuals are veterans. It's a disproportionate portion of the homeless population are veterans. The majority are male and single, though we're seeing a rise in homeless female veterans as well, and they often have children that accompany them when they're homeless. The majority of the veterans that are homeless suffer from a mental illness or substance use disorder, and unfortunately, we see a lot of co-occurring instances with veterans, so people that are suffering from a mental illness and a substance use disorder. And another thing we're seeing a rise in is traumatic brain injuries that are affecting veterans as a whole, and I see a lot of homeless veterans with TBIs. Roughly 40% of homeless veterans are African American or Hispanic, which is a shocking statistic because African American and Hispanic individuals only make up 13 to 14% of the overall veteran population. So they're very disproportionately represented in the homeless population. And then younger veterans, between the ages of 18 and 50, 50% of homeless veterans are between the ages of 18 and 50. Okay. So the Valor House is addressing the issue of homeless veterans, and we're a partnership between 3 agencies. The VA provides funding for our program, and then they also provide support for case management and program direction. I work directly with a VA liaison who assists myself and our veterans in a team approach to goal planning and discharge planning. The Missoula Housing Authority owns the building and acts as property manager or landlord. And their voucher department facilitates the vouchers attached to each unit at the Valor House. So while residents are living at Valor House, they are paying 30% of their income towards their rent. And then the Housing Authority, in a great benefit, also offers a Section 8 housing voucher upon program completion. So at 12 months, veterans can apply for a Section 8 housing voucher to take into the community. It's a great path to housing. So the Housing Authority is actually the grantee, and they contract with the Poverello Center for supportive services for the programmatic aspects of Valor House. And so I'm a Poverello Center employee. And what I do is provide the supportive services on site. I do the case management for our veterans and also the program management. And I have a team of 5 support staff members and so we have somebody on shift at the building for 24 hours a day. Excuse me. So this is the HUD definition of transitional housing. And transitional housing is just one model of housing that is used to address homelessness. So it's a project that's designed to provide housing and appropriate supportive services to homeless persons to facilitate movement to independent housing within 24 months. So these are longer term programs, and they're housing and shelter, and then there's also the supportive services part of it, where people are actively working on addressing their barriers to housing, what led to homelessness, what can be done to maintain permanent housing after the program is over. So the Housing Authority, as I said, their voucher department facilitates the vouchers that are attached to each unit. And so our veterans, they pay 30% of their income towards their rent on a monthly basis. If they have zero income, then they pay zero rent. And at 12 months, they're eligible for a Section 8 voucher. And it's a great path to housing and a real benefit to this program, because the Section 8 waiting list in Missoula County is typically 4 to 5 years long. And it's also an opportunity to address the barriers to housing. While the veterans are living at Valor House, they can address and adjust and really learn how to function with a landlord, how to pay rent on time, those sorts of things. And then the Housing Authority also has a great program called the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, which is offered to all individuals on Section 8 housing, and is another really beneficial program that our veterans take advantage of. It's a little complicated, but essentially if a veteran comes into the Valor House and has no income, they're paying no rent. And then if they obtain a job, they will then have to pay rent. A third of their income that they receive from employment will go towards their rent. With this Family Self-Sufficiency Program, an escrow account is set up, and the veterans, the rent that they would be paying to the Missoula Housing Authority goes into that escrow account. So they're essentially paying themselves. And then when they graduate out of this program, they can keep that income. So here's some eligibility requirements of our program. Veterans have to have served 1 day of active duty. They don't necessarily have to be eligible for VA healthcare or other benefits. Just literally 1 day of active duty. We can only accept individuals that have been honorably discharged or have an other than dishonorably discharged separation from the military. So a medical or other discharge is acceptable. They have to reside self-reliantly at the Valor House, so they have to be responsible for their own activities of daily living, cooking, cleaning, able to access transportation. And then they have to be considered homeless by HUD standards. And that means that they have lived in somewhere that's not meant for habitation, literally sleeping on the street, spending a night in a shelter. We're also able to take people that are coming out of inpatient treatment programs. And then recently, I've been able to take people that are coming out of being incarcerated. We serve both male and female veterans at the Valor House. Because we have 1-bedroom units, we're able to serve both male and female veterans, whereas other programs like the Valor House have dorm-style apartments, so they can only serve male veterans. And then our veterans have to be eligible for HUD assistance, meaning there's an income requirement. They have to make below a certain amount in order to access the program, and then they can't be violent or sexual offenders. Okay. So the supportive services piece, what we offer at the Valor House, is a big piece is case management. And so when a veteran comes into the Valor House, I do an assessment with them and it's a really comprehensive questionnaire where we go over a large portion of their history, family history, housing history, what their military history was like, any sorts of drug and alcohol issues that might exist, and then who their support network is, who's supporting them in their path towards housing. And so because I do an assessment that's that comprehensive, we can do goal planning that's very veteran specific and strengths based. And so all of our veterans that are at the Valor House are working on 3 goals, at least 3 goals. One of them is housing, where people would like to go after Valor House, what they'd like their housing to look like. And then income, either stabilization or increasing their income. And our veterans because they are all ages. They're coming to us with, they're either looking for jobs, applying for SSI or disability income, or working with the VA for VA disability. And then something they'd like to work on for self-actualization is the third goal. And people interpret this a variety of different ways because these are veteran-specific goal plans. And so some people like to take the opportunity to really focus on their mental health and sobriety. And so they access services, medication management, therapy, support groups to address those issues. Or they'd like to work on physical health. They've been living on the street for decades, finally are stable enough to address the real physical health issues that have arisen for them. And then we have people that want to actually finally learn how to use computers, or people that want to take writing classes. So again, it's interpreted a variety of different ways. And then a lot of what I do is referrals for our veterans to other programs in the community that can assist them with achieving these goals. And then we also do discharge planning, which is really the logistics of how somebody actually transitions from the Valor House to their permanent housing. So that's when we talk about, what is your savings plan? How much do deposits cost? What do we need to do to get you actually into your apartment? What sort of furniture do you need? What sort of supports do we need to put in place to make sure that you can maintain this housing? And then we're support staffed 24 hours per day, and that it's a great team at Valor House now who's able to provide emotional support to our veterans at any time of the day. And so these are some examples of VA programs that I refer to that assist our veterans. So the VA healthcare system, they can provide comprehensive mental health care and physical health care for eligible veterans. VA vocational rehab is another place where I refer veterans. And then there's a couple of transportation services in the VA that help veterans get to appointments. And then the vet center here in town, which is actually downtown, which they can serve veterans that have had military sexual trauma or are combat veterans. So it's a great resource for those vulnerable populations. And then these are some community programs. And these are, there are so many programs in this community that assist people, but these are just a few that I work with. Experience Works is an on-site job training program for folks that are 55 and older, which is about half of the population that I work with. Summit Independent Living helps with disability and SSI filings. Montana Voc Rehab is a great place to refer people for placements with jobs. Partnership in Western Montana Mental Health can assist veterans that aren't qualified for VA health care. The AA community is huge for our veterans. We have quite a few that are actively involved in local meetings. And then the Poverello Center, of course, provides the emergency shelter that people need while they're waiting for the Valor House at times. And then we get a lot of support from the community in the form of donations to keep our facility stocked. So here are a few rules of occupancy at the Valor House. We are a sober living facility both on and off the premises. A lot of our veterans are in various stages of recovery, so it's very important that we maintain the sobriety of the Valor House. There's a curfew at Valor House from midnight to 5 a.m., so all of our veterans need to be in the Valor House by midnight. Any leave that they'd like to take away from the Valor House must be approved ahead of time by myself and then with the VA. And leave is mostly used for things like family emergencies, medical emergencies, guard drill, if we've got veterans that are going to drill, and anything in line with their goals. So, for instance, if I have a veteran that's actively working on mental health care, and that's one of his goals, and he decides as a part of his mental health care is he'd like to take an overnight camping trip once a month to get out and commune with nature. I can advocate very well for that sort of leave with the VA. And then there's a work, school, or community engagement requirement. So our veterans either need to be volunteering in the community or pursuing work or school. And I think that's a great requirement because it gets the veterans out into Missoula and getting to know organizations in our community. And then there are weekly chores at the Valor House. Even though we do have individual apartments for our veterans, it's very much communal living. So the veterans do a great job of keeping our facility looking good. Okay. So our facility, we have 17 one-bedroom units, and those are furnished. And so somebody could literally come in with absolutely nothing and go into an apartment and be able to cook a meal and sleep in a bed and use basic toiletries that we stock the bathrooms with. And we stock our units with purely through donations of the community. So if we happen to get a donation of a microwave, we'll put that in a unit, or linens, so we really rely on our community to assist with furnishing the units. And we have a communal kitchen, which is a really great kitchen that some of the veterans use when they're doing communal meals. 2 laundry rooms, 1 on each floor with free laundry facilities. 2 communal televisions and 4 communal computers so that veterans use them to practice computer skills, write resumes, stay in touch with family, that sort of thing. So I wanted to show you some somewhat blurry pictures. This is the back of our facility, and these are garden boxes here that were built by a local volunteer organization. And you can't really see, but we've got quite a strawberry crop that comes in every year. And this year we partnered with Marchie's Nursery, who donated quite a few starts to our community garden, and it really did flourish. And the veterans took that project on and really cared for the community garden. And this is our communal kitchen that I was talking about. We've got a deep freezer over here, a great gas range, and then a fridge and freezer here. And so part of one of the benefits of Valor House is we get the emergency food truck delivery 3 times a week from the Poverello Center. It's a Poverello program where they take the food truck out, go to grocery stores who are getting rid of food that is not expired, but it's sort of on its way out, and that's how they run the soup kitchen at the POV. Well, they bring a food delivery to Valor House Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and so we have a lot of dairy and canned goods, so veterans can really subsidize their diet by using the Valor House kitchen. Okay, and then this is just one of our other communal rooms. And these heads, we have a bunch of these mounts all over the facility that were donated by the Boone and Crockett Club. So they're actually really great prize-winning mounts. And then I wanted to show our virtual room tour so we could see what the inside of a room looks like. So this is the sitting area. And like I said, so all of this furniture you see we've gotten through donation. So this is the sitting area here. And then a full bathroom over here, and you can see some of the toiletries that we set up a room with. And then the bedroom is down this hallway. And then small pantry and the kitchen area. So they're true 1-bedroom apartments. Yeah. Okay. And then last, I just wanted to share where our veterans transition. A lot of them transition into the Missoula community with using the Section 8 voucher. They're also able to port their voucher, meaning transfer it to another community. So we've had some veterans that decide they have a better support system in a different place. And so we put community and mental and physical health supports in place and help them move to another community if that's where they'd like to go. We also have had veterans use the HUD-VASH program, which is a VA and HUD program. where veterans, you obtain a voucher and then also have VA case management associated with the voucher. And so veterans that need a little bit more support after leaving Valor House can utilize that program. And then the Shelter Plus Care voucher program is community case management and a housing voucher. Younger veterans, the Job Corps program has been really great. They offer that job training that's really important and job placement. And then we've had veterans transition into public housing. And then one thing I didn't list on here is that I've had actually quite a few veterans that are very interested in transitioning without subsidy. And so they obtain employment and really work towards being self-sufficient and not being on any sort of housing assistance or voucher. So that is all that I have. Are there any questions? Do you have any questions?
You said that, 30%, their income towards sort of rent, and you set up an escrow account, is that after a year, or?
So that's a housing authority program, that family self-sufficiency is what it's called. And so it's a 5-year program, and it's offered to everybody that's on a Section 8 voucher. And so since veterans are on a voucher while they're in the Valor House, they can start the program there and then continue it when they transition out onto a Section 8 voucher. Does that make sense?
Does it start when they start the program, or does it start after?
Yeah.
After they've been in?
They are eligible for it the minute they lease up at Valor House.
And then, I didn't know, on you said they had a communal kitchen, so they do their own cooking there in the kitchen, or?
So we don't do meals, but the kitchen is open for them to use, and they do make communal meals for one another.
I don't know how they cook them for themselves.
But they do have those kitchens in their own room that
Oh, they do? Okay.
that they use, yeah.
All right. Sure. Yeah, that's right. Let's see. I think that's all I have. No other questions there.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Okay.